Alright, well those marketplace deals got me again. So I bought some Wharfdale speakers and a Wharfdale active powered subwoofer. And the active subwoofer, no good. No good. Kaputski. So as soon as you plug it in, turn it on, there is a low frequency hum the whole time. Doesn't matter if anything's plugged into it. It doesn't matter where the volume is. On the active subwoofer, low frequency hum 24/7. Cheers, mate. And to really just kick me in the groin when a man's down, one of the tweeters is blown on the floor standing speakers as well. So not only is there issues with the subwoofer, but also the speakers, and the speakers were the main reason I brought them anyway. So we'll open it up anyway and try and fix it so I can try and at least make myself feel better about this deal. Alright, so I've gone and plugged it in. I've got an RCD and a breaker board. There's also the breaker at the mains, so I'm pretty sure I'll be pretty safe playing with this. Now if I turn it on, you will hear the hum that it makes, and it makes it all the time. So nothing's plugged into it. There's no inputs other than the plug to the mains to power it. If you turn the volume up and down, the hum is unaffected. And if you touch the outsides of the RCAs, which is the earth for the RCA, that would, if it was an earth loop problem or a ground earth short, you'd normally get like a popping or a crackling, so you'd actually disturb the you know. So that leads me to believe it's a filter capacitor. Now you've got two main big filter capacitors in most amplifiers, and they're easy to spot. As soon as you open up any amplifier, they're the two biggest capacitors. So they're your filter caps. They're usually at the end of the amplification stage, and they're there to filter out electrical noise that the rest of the circuitry actually generates while it's working. So because that filter cap's gone bad, we're actually hearing parts of the other components that make up the PCB board in this thing giving off electrical noise. Alright, very quick, very easy. Got our amp board out. There was just two plugs going to it. One I suspect will be going to the power light that's on the front of the box, and the other is going to the woofer itself. So I've just quickly unplugged those to free this from the housing. As soon as we turn it over, just as I said, the two biggest capacitors are our filter capacitors. So they're at the end of the amplification stage, and they are what soak up the electrical noise and stop that from coming through to your speakers. And as soon as you visually inspect them, you'll note one nice and flat on top. The next one right beside it, if the camera focuses nicely for us, you'll see it's expanded at the top. So there's obviously issues inside that one, and this is a general fault. So as soon as you look for a bad capacitor, visual inspection, straight away go for the top. Make sure that there's no expansion from any, and as soon as you see some expansion like that, you don't need a meter to test that, it's poked. Anyone with any actual pride and skill would remove the transformer by undoing the four little nuts and bolts that hold it in place, then giving you better access to desolder and probably use a solder sucker to remove this capacitor. I, however, am not that person, so by unsoldering one side and wiggling it up, and unsoldering the other side and wiggling it the other way, doing that again. Come on. Dabbing a bit of solder on the joint to actually make the whole joint flow, as weird as it seems. Look at that, you can see it. Come on, there we go. The problem with doing it that way is you do overheat the PCB board, and you start to potentially bubble the varnish and actually burn the board. So, and you also make your component quite hot, but this being buggered doesn't really matter. So now I need to go get a capacitor. Now J-Car's closed and I ain't about to spend any money, so I'll go have a hunt, see what I've got, and we'll probably pull something out of something else. Alright, we have our donor, our victim. Look at this nugget. Skytronic, the 5.1 channel digital speech control amplifier. It just reeks COVID, eh? It does, however, run though, so if we plug it in, panny on, you'll note the screen does look quite nice. those, like, you know, looks like you've got a couple of VU meters that are actually like digitally represented, which actually look really cool. However, once you start using them, I don't know if I can really display it on the camera, but basically around the outside you've got the scale. So, you know, your 0 up to what have you, and you can see it at the moment, but wait till all of those light up, the blue disappears. It gets duller and duller. Wait till it disappears, you'll see it get bright straight away. Boom. See? So look, the circuitry in this is just shit. That tells me there's inadequate like voltage even going to this screen to power it. Good grief. A whole heap of buttons that honestly all do just nothing worthwhile, like echo, delay. I don't want an echo or a delay. You know, many systems tried that with, you know, your hall and your jazz and your concert, but you'd put it on hall and it would just add a digital echo. And it always sounded like rubbish. So we'll open it up and hopefully find a couple of decent sized filter capacitors, rob one out of it, and hopefully fix the Wharfdale sub, because I think the Wharfdale sub deserves to be going a bit more than Skytronic 5.1 digital speech control amplifier. Alright, there's our filter capacitors, and to be honest, they're actually a little bit smaller than the ones in the Wharfdale subwoofer. So our Wharfdale subwoofer cap is a 6800 microfarad. These are 6800 microfarad. Most larger audio filter caps are that rating. However, 63 volts compared to 50 volts. So where that will come into play is at higher volumes. So the higher voltage your main filter capacitors are is generally to cope with the amount of output that your amplification can give. So a high power amplifier will require a high voltage filter capacitor. The lower the voltage of the filter capacitor, doesn't matter of the microfarad, is generally because there's a lower output power amplification stage before that. That's not to say though that 50 volts is constantly going through that. The volts fluctuates with the sound. Your sound wave, your speaker, it's a coil. It's got an input, you know, positive and negative. It takes a AC phase sine wave. The more voltage you give to that coil, the harder it moves, the more sound you get out of it. So at lower volumes, there's lower voltage going through those filter caps and down your speaker wires. At higher volumes, there's more voltage, you know, to drive the speakers harder and make it go louder. So I would think that this was rated at probably a little bit over max volume on the Wharfdale. These 50 volts should be fine until you drive the Wharfdale at full volume and really send some good low frequency sound through it and really make it work. Then they could get over voltage through them, and I'll just end up blowing those ones, so I'll just have to change it again. But for all purposes, we'll give it a go. Alright, we've got our Wharfdale board back on the table, and our Skytronic lower voltage filter cap. Alright, well, that's soldered in, sweet as, and you can see it's a different size from the other one, and when they were both matching to begin with, but hey, see if it works, eh? We'll get the cabinet back on the table and install it. Alright, I've plugged it into my RCD. Come on. I shouldn't have talked. I'll do that again. There's the solenoid clicking on, opening the amplification stage up. no hum, so I'd say that's working right now. We'll do the screws up though, and then we'll flip it over. We should be able to see the green power light on the front to confirm, and then we'll plug it in and test it. Alright, well I've just hooked it up to my Yamaha amplifier. I've got it running by itself. I turned that to 2-channel stereo and then turned the front speakers off, so just the woofer is going. And I do have it quiet at the moment because I do have neighbours and it's late at night, but once this gets into the drop you'll hear it sweet as. Good grief. Seems to be running sweet.